Kevin and Brian were hired to manage operations for a massive logistics company. Kevin optimized everything. He built flawless automated spreadsheets, created standard operating procedures for every task, and practically eliminated his own daily workload to prove his efficiency. Brian, however, was notoriously sluggish. He built a supply chain tracking system that only he understood, using a messy web of passwords and manual approvals that he refused to document. Kevin mocked Brian's outdated, lazy methods. Then, the board of directors ordered a corporate restructuring to cut operational costs. Kevin was handed a severance package on a Tuesday. His flawless systems meant the company no longer needed him to run them. When they looked at Brian's department, the entire tracking grid froze the moment they tried to lock him out of the network. Brian was completely untouched. Kevin thought the goal was building a perfect machine. Brian knew the goal was making sure the machine broke without him. He survived using a contrarian survival tactic called the architect's anchor, a strategy the corporate elite used to make getting fired mathematically impossible. The architect's anchor revealed. The modern corporate apparatus operates on a fundamental engineered deception. The deception asserts that extreme diligence, maximum output, and relentless optimization yield unbreakable job security and exponential wealth. The reality operates in the exact opposite direction. In the ruthless mathematical calculus of corporate finance, extreme efficiency is actively punished, and complete transparency is a professional death sentence. The architect's anchor is the ultimate antidote to corporate dispensability. It operates on a single, terrifying truth. An employee's true market value is never determined by the volume of work they produce, but by the exact volume of chaos their sudden absence would inflict upon the organization. The architect's anchor dictates that true financial and professional security requires the intentional design of a structural bottleneck. It demands the creation of a workflow, a digital ecosystem, or a client relationship that fundamentally paralyzes the company if the architect is removed. While the masses exhaust themselves competing to become the sharpest, fastest gear in the machine, the corporate strategist understands a grim reality. Gears are explicitly designed to be swapped out without interrupting the machine. The objective is never to be gear. The objective is to become the rusted bolt holding the entire transmission together. When an individual successfully deploys the architect's anchor, they achieve what the uninitiated mistake for laziness. They no longer sprint on the hamster wheel of daily productivity because their leverage is rooted in hostage holding, not labor output. 315. The curse of the transparent operator. To understand why the seemingly lazy survive while the hardest workers perish, the tragedy of the transparent operator must be dissected. In every corporate hierarchy, there exists a hyper-productive individual who carries the operational weight of three separate departments. This individual documents every single process perfectly. They construct flawless, color-coded training manuals. They mentor junior staff and solve systemic problems before upper management even registers an issue. Mainstream society praises this behavior as the ultimate virtue. Corporate ledgers exploit it as a temporary cost-saving measure. When an employee is entirely transparent and perfectly efficient, they actively commoditize their existence. By documenting every workflow and creating frictionless standard operating procedures, the high-performing worker is literally ghostwriting the instruction manual for their immediate termination. They systematically eradicate all friction from their role. When an economic downturn strikes, private equity algorithms and ruthless executives do not evaluate loyalty, nor do they care about 80-hour work weeks. They analyze the balance sheet. They identify a highly paid employee whose daily tasks have been so thoroughly optimized that they can now be executed by a cheaper subordinate, an offshore contractor, or a rudimentary artificial intelligence script. The reward for extreme, transparent productivity is never financial freedom. The reward is simply a heavier workload, directly up until the precise second the employee becomes too expensive to keep on the payroll. The transparent operator builds a perfect, frictionless machine, steps outside to admire it, and watches in horror as the machine drives away without them. 6 minutes. Weaponized incompetence and strategic lethargy. The individuals who survive every round of mass layoffs are rarely the ones staying at the office until midnight. They are the practitioners of strategic lethargy. This framework is vastly different from genuine uselessness. A truly incompetent worker produces zero value and is terminated swiftly. The strategist, conversely, calculates exactly where to apply extreme, indispensable competence and where to deploy weaponized incompetence. Weaponized incompetence is the deliberate, calculated refusal to absorb tasks that offer zero defensive leverage. When pressured to join a cross-functional culture committee, learn a generic new project management software, or document a basic daily workflow, the strategist feigns polite confusion. They intentionally perform poorly on highly visible, low-value administrative tasks that serve only to heap uncompensated labor onto their shoulders. They fiercely protect their cognitive bandwidth with a titanium shield of deliberate ineptitude. Behind this carefully curated facade of laziness lies the core mechanism of the architect's anchor. The thousands of hours saved by dodging pointless corporate pageantry are aggressively redirected toward capturing one singular piece of critical infrastructure. The strategist surveys the corporate landscape and identifies the most obscure, terrifying, or complex system within the organization. It might be a crumbling legacy database that processes millions in transactions, an ancient compliance protocol that prevents federal audits, or a temperamental, high net worth client who despises the CEO. The strategist bypasses the modern, flashy projects and quietly embeds themselves entirely within that dark, terrifying system, constructing the black box. Ownership of the critical system is not enough. The system must be rendered entirely incomprehensible to anyone else. This phase is known as the creation of the black box. If management can understand how a system works, management can replace the person running it. Therefore, the strategist intentionally introduces dense complexity. They refuse to use standard naming conventions for vital files. They construct labyrinthine spreadsheets that rely on manual, undocumented macro inputs. They hoard the institutional knowledge required to keep the system online, actively refusing to cross-train subordinates under the guise of being too busy keeping the lights on. When upper management asks for a progress report or a process map, the strategist speaks strictly in dense, impenetrable technical jargon, ensuring the executives feel too intimidated to ask follow-up questions. The goal is to make the executives view the strategist department as a terrifying, volatile nuclear reactor. As long as the reactor produces energy, the executives will refuse to look inside, and more importantly, they will refuse to fire the only technician who knows which buttons prevent a catastrophic meltdown. This intentional hoarding of complexity is the ultimate insurance policy. The transparent operator seeks to make their job look easy to prove their mastery. The architect actively makes their job look like an unsolvable nightmare to prove their absolute necessity. The hostage negotiation. The true lethal power of the architect's anchor is only revealed when disaster strikes. Supply chains fracture, inflation spikes, revenues plummet. The executive board panics and mandates a blind 30% reduction in headcount to appease furious shareholders. The corporate slaughterhouse doors open, the transparent operators, the hustlers, and the ultimate team players are the very first to fall. Their flawless documentation allows management to sever them with zero operational friction. They are handed cardboard boxes and escorted out by security, utterly bewildered as to why their unwavering loyalty was punished. Then the executives look at the architect's department. The algorithm suggests eliminating the seemingly lazy employee who only appears to work 20 hours a week. But the moment the human resources department attempts to revoke the architect's system access, systemic alarms sound, the legacy database stutters, the flagship client threatens to pull their account. The realization washes over the boardroom. Firing the architect will not save money. It will instantly halt daily recurring revenue and trigger a company-wide collapse. The termination meeting is immediately canceled. The dynamic fundamentally shifts. It is no longer an employee-employer relationship. It is a hostage negotiation. The company realizes they are completely trapped. Not only does the architect survive the mass layoff untouched, but they also possess the exact leverage required to demand a massive retention bonus, a corner office, and even fewer actual working hours. The transparent worker believes the game was about outworking the competition. The architect knew the game was always about building a fortress so heavily fortified that the company would rather pay a massive ransom than attempt to breach the walls.